What if events went differently? What if Pennywise from It fought the X-Men? Imagine a scenario where Pennywise had invaded the X-Mansion. What do you think would happen? Welcome back, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, to the finale of the Halloween specials on the channel for the year of 2024. I can't thank you enough, my fellow watchers of the multiverse. It feels like we haven't seen each other in a couple weeks, actually, and it's just been nice to officially get these videos out there, and I'm very excited to finally have this one as the grand finale, since Halloween is today. It is October 31st as of this recording, and I am just very excited to finally have this video out for you guys. So that being said, let me know what you thought of all of the Halloween videos, and I will be doing a ton more requests, but I also have some very, very exciting news. And that is, I will be unveiling a new YouTube channel, a second channel, that will be coming soon. It's going to have a ton of horror stories, like psychological horror, psychological thriller. There's gonna be sci-fi, there's gonna be a little mix of fantasy in there as well. So if you guys are interested in that, I would highly recommend that once this channel comes up, that you guys do subscribe if you guys are a MissedThePart fan. But again, I can't thank you enough, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, as, you know, we've been doing tons of videos. It's just been a huge grind, and I'm very glad to get into the finale and really get into this. So I do want to say that this new channel, it will be coming soon, and when it does, I will just add the link in the description down below. So it might take me, you know, a couple more weeks to get that to the ground, because I'm building up a new channel from the ground up, and I'm just very excited. So again, my fellow watchers of the multiverse, let's get into the brand new Halloween episode. In the space-time continuum, there are several universes, each with a unique sequence of events that creates that timeline. Many of these universes follow a seemingly similar pattern, with very little areas of variance between them. However, some universes are radically different from others, and all it takes is one variable to create such a terrible change. Location: the X-Mansion. The boy's name was Ben, and he had been enjoying his peaceful sleep when a nightmare forced him to violently jerk up from his bed. When he woke up, he attempted to sleep again, but realized he couldn't sleep anymore. Looking at his watch, he realized it was past 2 a.m., and he knew that he had to think of something fast. Stepping out of his room, Ben decided to toy a bit with his abilities. He was an empath, and with his powers, he could feel the emotions of others and sometimes affect them. As he walked past a few students' rooms, he could feel the fear that emanated from their rooms. He wasn't really surprised, as it had just been a few weeks since Senator Kelly had called off his anti-mutant campaign and released Beast from prison. Of course, there were still some mutant students who were living in fear, having PTSD from the various attacks that had come to their school, or what they saw on the news. Deciding to use his powers, Ben concentrated and focused his abilities on taming down the fear in these students. In a few minutes, he had successfully tamed the fear of quite a number of students. He smiled at his achievement. Professor Xavier would definitely be proud of him. Suddenly, he heard footsteps down the hallway. Worse still, he could feel a deep sense of fear along that path. Wondering what it was, he followed the fear till he got to the boiler room. By the time he got here, the fear was gone. He heard a crashing sound and turned sharply. "Who's there?" he asked, ready to defend himself. To his right, he heard a wild laughter, and turned again. His skin hairs began to rise. He felt a different kind of fear, but this time, it was his own fear. Before he could process what was happening, he realized something was above him. He looked up and screamed. Professor Xavier woke up violently, his strong telepathic abilities picking up a presence in his room. He looked around sharply, but his mind was way quicker. As his mind searched the vicinity, he found nothing. That's strange, Xavier noted, calming down for a minute. It was a big mistake on his part. He felt a strong force push him down on the bed, and he found himself gasping. Location: flower shop. Scott Summers and Jean Grey had spent the entire day, enjoying each other's company as they picked out flowers for their wedding. The more they planned their wedding, the more in love they fell with each other. It was almost like their dreams were coming true. What they did not know was that Logan had been following them from a distance, ensuring that he would not get caught. For a moment, Logan feared that Jean would detect his presence, but she seemed too distracted to bother. As Logan watched them, he felt a slight pain in his chest. He was happy for them, no doubt, but he also felt a level of pain because he loved Jean so much. The idea of her marrying someone else was apparently never going to sit well with him. Suddenly, he heard a voice whisper in his ear and he turned sharply. Seeing no one, he shrugged and continued moving. The whispers came again, and he pulled out his claws, standing in a fighting position. However, there was no one there again. Deciding not to act on impulse, he took a few steps further, but this time, he heard the whispers again. Only this time, they were louder. This time, he placed his hands on his head and roared. What was happening to him? Location: the X Mansion. Storm had been moving around the hallway, en route to her office as the students greeted her. She smiled as she responded to their greetings, and they went about their day. Today was going to be a normal school day, or so she thought. She arrived at Professor Xavier's office and knocked on the door. Hearing no response, she knocked again, but there was still no response. "Professor," she called as she opened the office and stepped in. To her surprise, Xavier wasn't in the office. That was very strange. It was so unlike him not to be here. Had he stepped out perhaps and not informed the X-Men? Inasmuch as she understood the rare possibility of such an action, she also knew it was quite dangerous. Yes, Xavier was more than capable of defending himself, but Storm knew she would feel better if she knew that someone was with him. She already knew that Jubilee was out of the city for a few days, and last she checked, Scott and Jean had gone a date. Logan had also left for some personal business, and Gambit was still in the X-Mansion. Storm also tried to take an inventory of any other X-Man that would have possibly gone with Xavier, but then every person she thought of had one engagement or the other. So where had Xavier gone to? Storm walked back to her office deep in thought. In fact, she was so lost that she did not notice Gambit on her path, and she accidentally bumped into him. Upset, Storm snapped at him but quickly worked on her temper. From the looks of things, Gambit also looked upset. Storm asked Gambit what was happening, and Gambit mentioned that there was a kid named Ben that was meant to see him in his office today. Turns out the boy was a no-show. Moreover, when Gambit went to Ben's class to check for him, he was gone. When Storm asked where Ben would have run off to, Gambit noted that there was more information that would shock her. Gambit had studied the school's security systems to figure out when Ben would have left, but realized that Ben was last spotted heading towards the boiler room. Worse still, Gambit noticed that 4 other students had done this same thing, and all of them were now missing. Now, Storm was very worried. First, Xavier was gone, and now students were disappearing in the basement. She noted that if the students were disappearing in the boiler room, then it was about time they paid the boiler room a little visit. Gambit chuckled, noting that he figured that was exactly what she was going to say. Storm and Gambit had reached the boiler room, their minds very alert. As they moved, they admitted that something about this room felt unusual. Suddenly, they began to hear movements on the walls, causing them to look around frantically. Believing that she could cause whatever was in the room to emerge, Storm used her weather manipulation abilities to create a huge gush of wind inside the room. However, they heard glasses break and a maniacal laughter mixing with the winds, which bothered them exceedingly. And then, it happened so fast. Gambit felt something grab him by the leg and drag him into the shadows. He screamed as he struggled to release himself. Seeing what just happened, Storm shot a lightning bolt towards whatever just dragged Gambit, but she missed the shot. "Show yourself, you monster!" Storm roared. She probably would have been better off not threatening the monster because, unknown to her, there was a clown standing right behind her. Once she turned, it stabbed her in the stomach using its claws. Stunned, Storm blasted the clown with her lightning before flying out of the room, clutching her wounded abdomen. Location: store. Scott and Jean were happily shopping for more wedding items when they noticed Logan stepping into the store. At first, Scott was happy to see his friend, and he walked towards Logan to comment on how they randomly bumped into each other here. However, to Scott's surprise, Logan's claws emerged, and he began to attack Scott. Sensing Logan was not himself, Scott put on a defensive fight, refusing to attack Logan while dodging most of his attacks. However, before Logan could land a devastating blow on Scott, Jean Grey telekinetically shoved Logan to the wall. Pinning him there, she used her telepathic abilities to dive into his head, searching for whatever was wrong with him, albeit barely. Jean was able to rescue Logan from the trance he was in, but was shocked at what she found. She found traces of Charles Xavier in Logan's mind. It was as if Charles Xavier had been mentally manipulating Logan, but how? Scott noted that they had to return to the X Mansion if they wanted to find out what was really happening. Location: X Mansion. When Scott, Logan, and Jean arrived, they were horrified to find Storm bleeding out in the garden. Scott quickly rushed Storm to the medbay, while Jean and Logan decided to find Xavier. Using her telepathic abilities, Jean was able to trace Xavier to the danger room. 4. The moment they got there, they found Xavier in a trance-like state as well, completely oblivious to what was happening around him. Once again, Jean used her telepathic abilities to push herself into Xavier's mind, rescuing him from whatever had invaded his mind. However, the attempt had weakened her, causing her to fall into Logan's arms. On the bright side, Xavier had been saved, and he alerted the X-Men that there was great danger in the X-Mansion. With the rest of the X-Men unavailable, Gambit captured, and Storm being critically injured, Xavier had a meeting with Scott, Logan, and Jean. He noted that he knew what was in their school. It was a demonic being known to some as Pennywise, and to others as IT. While Pennywise's origins were uncertain, it was said to have been sleeping for a few years before eventually awakening to feed, and then falling asleep again. Clearly, the location that Pennywise fell asleep happened to be the location the X-Mansion was built on. It became obvious that Pennywise was capturing students to feed on them, and it must have attacked Xavier because Xavier would have been powerful enough to trace it, and it must have gone after Wolverine so that it would use Xavier's telepathy to mind control Logan to kill the remaining X-Men. Hearing this, Logan suggested that they had to get rid of Pennywise now, or stand the chance losing more to the monster. The rest of the X-Men agreed. Soon, Logan, Jean, and Scott were in the boiler room, actively looking out for Pennywise. As they moved, they could hear whispers all around, but they tried their best to stay focused. Feeling like something was off, Jean used her telepathic abilities to scan the environment. She was right. Pennywise had trapped the students it captured alongside Gambit in webs across the ceiling. From the looks of things, it was draining their life force before it decided to eat them, finally. Before the trio could move, they were horrified to see Gambit open his eyes and jump down from the web. He appeared in a trance and he prepared to attack his former teammates. Scott sparred Gambit, while Logan and Jean attempted to release the other students. However, they were stopped when the monster appeared. Pennywise had the face of a spider and the body of a huge tarantula. Seeing this, Logan and Jean attacked the monster head-on, but the fight was more difficult than they expected. Meanwhile, Xavier remained in the danger room, in deep concentration. While the X-Men battled Pennywise, Xavier was attempting to use Pennywise's strategy against him. Pennywise had made a big mistake to attack the mind of one of the most powerful telepaths in the world now. Xavier had a free ticket inside Pennywise's mind. Using his power, Xavier immobilized Pennywise immediately, disconnecting him from the energy he was absorbing from the students he had captured, and disrupting his connection with Gambit. This allowed Jean Grey the advantage of telekinetically lifting Pennywise in the air. Xavier immediately mentally signaled Scott to attack, and Scott knew that he needed more than his regular heat vision to finish off Pennywise. Scott removed his goggles, blasting Pennywise with the full brunt of his heat vision. Pennywise screamed as he burned up to death, and in that moment, it was over. Pennywise was dead. 3 days later, Storm started recuperating just fine, and the captured students, including Ben, had returned to their regular lives in school. Xavier smiled as everything was going back to normal, but deep down, he knew that the curse of Pennywise never really died. He only hoped that when Pennywise returned, they could defeat him again.